Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Business Spotlight. I'm Scott McMeans with Action Coach. I'm here today with Tim Jones from Health Nuts Media. Yeah, good name. It's a great name, actually. And once you figure out what they do, I'm going to let Tim introduce himself. But in essence, they make really cool animation for healthcare education, mainly pediatrics and veterans, but they're branching out. This is what we're going to talk about today: is how you take your skill set, you kind of branch it out into the marketplace to get more awareness of what you're capable of and grow your business. So with that being said, Tim, I want you to introduce yourself. So the camera and the microphone are yours. Please tell everybody a little bit
Sure.
about
All
your
right.
story.
Well, hey, thanks for having me here. My name is Tim Jones, and as you said, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Health Nuts Media. So as you said, we create media really about health. And so we understand that it's a difficult subject to understand sometimes. It's hard to talk about sometimes. And so we use different things, non-written forms of communication, animation, narrative storytelling, to help overcome some of those barriers to communication and understanding to help people. So, and as you said, that really applies to kind of any business, right? So any
Right.
business that says, hey, I've got my message, but I don't think people are getting it, or it doesn't really resonate with them. And we can talk about that a little bit when we get into the storytelling part of it. But really, that's part of what we do. It's we like to say that the human brain is not a data processor; it's a story processor. And so, just dumping a lot of information on someone and hoping that they understand is probably not your best approach. So.
So let's dig into that a little bit, the story processor part. I love the idea how you present that because everyone's trying to figure out how, in fact, does the brain work.
Right.
And when we figure out how the brain works, then we're going to know, all right, that's why people buy something, or that's how they get educated. That's how we get to go from not knowing anything to, wow, I never knew that before.
Right.
So, talk to me a little bit about how you tap into that story processor part as opposed to the data download part. Why is that so important?
Right. Well, it really is a format, right? So we all humans love story, and that's just part of our part of our DNA, part of who we are. I've tried to study a lot of neuroscience and psychology, trying to understand why that is. Um, and lots of different sort of theories, about that. But it really sort of goes back to survival.
Hmm.
We are, uh, when things are the same, we tend to ignore them. And we're only looking for differences and dangers. And that's how how we survive, sort of, through time. And so this idea of storytelling is really you need conflict and you need resolution, and change. And that's really what a story is, because otherwise you just sort of tune out. Yeah, there's a lot of detail. One of my favorite writers on the subject says, if you've ever been listening to someone tell a story and they're going on and you're bored out of your mind, chances are they're not telling you a story at all, right? So they're just saying,
Hmm.
well, then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And, really, that's not a story, right? So a story is really conflict, change, resolution. And in that moment of resolution, the brain releases a whole sort of cocktail of chemicals that opens up your ability to empathize, to connect emotionally. And so a lot of what storytelling does, no matter if we're doing it in health or you're doing it for your brand or your business, um, you really want to connect emotionally with your audience. And so that's what we sort of focus on and work on when we're trying to impart information, help people understand something like that. So, say, kids going through asthma, right? So young
Yeah.
kid, is diagnosed with asthma, ends up in the emergency room, ends up being admitted, to the hospital, and spends a couple of days there. And now it's up to the care team there to help the family and the child understand sort of what asthma is and what those signs and symptoms are and how to take care of themselves and be prepared to manage this condition, this chronic condition that will most likely be with them for the rest of their lives. And so we talked to a lot of nurses that said, yeah, we had, print material, but they're not they're
Who's going
not
to
good
read that,
at that,
right? As a
right? There were some videos, but sort of having a doctor in a white coat sort of show you, okay, this is the inhaler, and here's what to do. Hard to really sort of empathize and get involved in, sort of understanding. So for the young kids, what we did is we told a story about the big bad wolf who goes to blow down the three little pigs' house, and he huffs and he puffs and he has an asthma attack, and the pigs get worried about him, and they take him into the doctor to learn all about sort of what's going on. And so there's some entertainment value there. It's a narrative story structure that pulls the viewer along. It's, over 30 minutes worth of educational material. And nurses would say, boy, trying to get a kid watch a 30-minute, video about
yeah,
asthma, is a hard thing. But, we'll come in and maybe they've watched this video two or three times because they think the characters are funny and they're interested in
yeah,
the story. And a lot of times what then the nurses, do is they want to find out what questions they have, so they can really, drill down. And at first, if, when you don't know anything, you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know
right.
what to ask. So, but, once you've sort of been through these videos, they would say, oh, the kids, like, I didn't understand when Big said, this or that. Like, oh, okay, yeah, let's talk about that. So it's a way
Gives you a
to,
foundation, right, to
right,
start the conversation. And there's a
exactly.
number of things that you made comment to, and I just want to hold court for just a second on
Yeah,
this because
sure.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of really good things that came out. The fact that we as human beings love to hear stories because um, we like to understand conflict, see change, get resolution. We like that because it follows a format in our brain that we can feel comfortable with. And if you do it in such a way that you can touch on empathy and connect on emotion, you are invested in the storyline, regardless of what it is and how it relates to you.
Right.
But now dump in as an asthmatic, I can understand exactly the story of the big bad wolf trying to do something he can't do because he has asthma, right? So now there's a whole connection to that. And then at the end of it, because of the conflict change resolution format, empathy and emotion, we all seem to understand a storyline that made no sense to us before. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden it makes sense.
Right.
Now I'm gonna take that theory or take that storyline, take that pattern and formula that you have and say,
Uh-huh.
when you are trying to be a successful business, you want to sell your product and you sell your product by solving a problem. And the problem is a conflict or a problem a company has. They're looking for change to make it better, and you are the part of the resolution. So now, if you think about it, doesn't have to be step by step, but if you follow that format by telling a story on how you can be really good at solving a company's problem, there's your solution
Right.
as far as why
Right.
Health Nuts Media is such a wow, a great opportunity for a business to tap into and say, all right, we have a great story to tell because this is what we do.
Right. Yeah.
So I appreciate that. It's a
Yeah.
much different way of approaching it, and you're
It- you know,
approaching it from a
oh,
scientific way, not I just like talking to people. So
right. And the media landscape has changed. I mean, that 30-second, ad is not the same, right? So that used to be
Right.
the way, okay, we communicate our brand message, and we sell in that way. And I think there's sort of a rejection of that over time, like, okay, you're just selling me something, right?
Right.
And people really, push back on that. But when you can tell a story and reach someone emotionally and say, God, yeah, they know
Mhm.
exactly what I'm going through. That pain that character is going through, I feel that. I've lived that, and
Yeah.
now I'm leaning forward to try to understand, well, how did they, and there's not one formula that all stories follow, but a lot of times, the first attempt, like, okay, you have your call to action, something bad happens, and you want to say, get your huff and puff back, or you want to, do something. A lot of times the first action you take doesn't work out very well, right? And so you
Yeah.
have to learn, and go through that
Mhm.
process and understand that, yeah, if everything was like problem comes along, then I just solve it like that. There's no emotional, connection. It doesn't resonate, with folks. But to say, this happened, and man, our hero struggles, right? I mean, Rocky wouldn't be nearly so interesting if he just went into the ring and
Right.
won unquestionably. You have to see him really struggle and really, go through the trials and tribulations of life, and overcome all obstacles until finally, in that
Yeah.
very last, the last scene, maybe he overcomes in that story. Like, well, it's, he actually didn't, he actually
Right.
didn't,
Which
win that, but it was still a hero's journey, right? So,
and quite frankly, I think it made him more connected to the audience. So when Rocky 2 came out, everybody
right,
wanted to see him win. Yeah,
exactly,
that's a
right,
great
right.
character arc and a
Yep.
great way to tell a story, right? And this is what we're talking about. So, what I want to ask you is what's the biggest challenge in your market right now? I'm going to assume, but I don't want to put it in your mouth unless I'm right. But what about AI? How does that impact Health Nuts Media? What is on the horizon for what you are doing and what AI proposes it can do?
All right. That is, that's the $64,000 question for all of us. It is the big challenge. I've got
Yeah.
lots of partners, lots of companies who maybe all of a sudden think, oh, I don't need you. I can just get the computer to spit something out, and
Mhm.
and take it from there. It sure would be cheaper, maybe. Um, but I think we'll see. I don't know if you saw, there was a lot of news yesterday. Coca-Cola just came out with their new ad for the holiday season, and it was AI generated, and it's just, like getting so much hate on social media because it looks, it looks photorealistic, but everybody knows that it's AI. And in that world, we call the uncanny valley, right? So something that looks almost real, but you can really tell. And I think more and more people are getting better at detecting what's real, what's AI, and it it starts to feel artificial, it starts to feel fake. And when you're talking about the emotions of the holiday and, trying to be real and then presenting that with, in a in a form that is totally artificial, really rubs people the wrong way. So I think that question about AI is unsettled. But lots of folks that I know in the animation industry are out of work now. I mean, it's really a lot of writers, that used to have really good careers, writing. A lot of creative, talented people, and you see this across, a lot of a lot of
Mm.
different industries where, is it coming into psychology? Is it coming into law? Is it coming into medicine? Is it coming into, so this idea that, well, my industry is safe is is not, is
Not
not
safe,
true. I think
but
we're all facing the same potential threat. Um, but at the same time, it may, I'm not anti-AI. Um,
mhm.
but I think it's, I understand from an actor standpoint, like I don't want to say you have the right to recreate my likeness and, my image and voice, without me, right? That belongs to me. You can't
Correct.
take. Um,
But
and
one thing that you made comment to, Tim, I think it's really important. As many AI platforms get better, you can only imagine what's going to happen. Because if I go back in my lifetime, computers weren't even reality when I was born. Now they're everywhere. The power of a computer that I hold in my hand is greater than what they use to launch and land a module into space. So it's amazing where we've come. But to your point, the AI that people see doesn't have emotion and it doesn't have that human element to it. It's a program and it's following its algorithm. I get that, but it does lack a level of authenticity and genuine. So, is AI ever going to get smart enough to bring emotion into something, or is that the human element is always going to be the human element, and we need folks like yourselves and actual writers to bring that to life?
that's the again, that is the huge debate, right? This idea that, well, we're racing towards artificial general intelligence where the computer will be more human than human, understand all the
Mhm.
nuances of what sort of makes us human better than we even understand ourselves. Is that possible? Um, yes, I think it is. Will it happen? Yes, I think, probably in the next 5 years, we may
Wow.
reach
Okay.
artificial, general intelligence. Um, that, yeah, a computer could, write a book or, write a symphony, maybe to, to rival the best humans that have ever lived. And that's a strange thing to, to think about. But I don't think it will live in a, in a bubble. And so what I think a lot of people are talking about is this sort of co-intelligence, that human intelligence. And I don't know if you read Ray Kurzweil and the, all of
Mm.
the, all of that, but the singularity is near basically says that, the human intelligence and computer intelligence will merge and become a different entity, entirely.
Okay.
Um, whether that's true
Interesting.
or not, there, a lot of great debate, out there. But I really do think that um, the 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 intelligence that's being created is being created by humans. Um, we will be able to hopefully use that to push our, creativity to make it, more boundless,
Yeah.
to do more, and hopefully not turn it into the Terminator where it's us against them. So.
We don't
Um,
want us against the machine.
right? We
We
don't,
don't want us
right?
against the
So,
machine.
yeah.
So I
But
want, I
in
want
the
to,
short term, I think it really is, it is impacting jobs, and it's
Mhm.
impacting my business. It's impacting a lot of, folks' business. And it's an uncertain time for sure.
I understand that. So Tim, how do you separate yourself from the market trend? How do you put Health Nuts Media into a position where you can provide what your customers are looking for? You can be that creative force that tells their story and taps into that story processor. How is it that you guys separate yourself from everybody else, including AI right now?
Right. So I mean, that's part of, that that idea that we've been doing this for a long time. We really lean into um, the humanity of what it is that we do, but at the same time, we can't ignore this technology. We can't ignore what is there. So, and I think if you do, you do that at your own peril. So,
Sure.
animation is a time intensive and costly, thing. And we don't do it the way, Walt Disney and those guys did, 70 years ago and
Mhm.
pencil on paper and then transfer that to
Right.
cells with ink and, paint every cell. Computers have come along and aided that, technology and will continue to. And so in some ways, it really is about trying to stay educated, trying to stay up on, on what's going on, embrace the advantages, potentially, some of the cost savings that can, come along with it, but don't turn it over to the computer to make all of the decisions. So,
Sure.
if you go to Chat GPT and say, write me a story about, the big bad wolf who has asthma, okay, it could spit something out a lot faster than I could, right? So, but hopefully at the end of the day, we still are able to bring in some of the real nuances. And I think, and we can only do that by working with the doctors and the nurses and the patients and all of that. All of the people that are really involved in that story, and what's going on, and understanding where they're coming from, where their fears and questions are, and try to respond to that. So
So no, it makes complete sense. I mean, every market is being impacted by this new technology. And what I'm trying to get to is with you and the challenges that you face, how are you mitigating those challenges? How are you stepping away from the perception that people have versus the reality that you bring to the table? And it sounds like it's your experience, it's the nuanced connection you have to your clients' product or service and what you're trying to educate your audience on, and building a really good story so the story processor picks it up, as
right.
opposed to relying on an artificial creation, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, because any time that we're working on a project, whether we were, working with the, children's hospitals or the VA, we spend a lot of time talking to the people that are involved in helping tell those stories and trying to understand the audience, like who are the veterans that are coming through your department? What fears do they have? What questions do
Yeah.
they have? What uncertainties are, what misconceptions are we trying to overcome here? And so that is, that part of the process just can't be shortcutted and say, okay, well, let's just,
Yeah.
let's just get that over. So, and I think any business, is the same, is the same way, right? So really, I
True.
really have a deep understanding of who my clients are, what they're going through, so that I can solve their problem, because they're all individual. And so in some ways, part of the promise of, AI in the future, I think, is this more individualized kind of approach, because not all kids are, asthma. Everybody doesn't experience it the
Mm.
same. We don't all have the same, experiences. So being able to, to have a more individualized approach, definitely has its advantages,
Yeah, I would
to
agree with that.
be able to do
That
that. So,
the story is always going to be unique, and
right,
building that story for a client is their unique thumbprint or fingerprint on the situation. You're just bringing that to light to allow other people to see it, read it, experience it, so they can learn and be a part of whatever story your client's trying to tell. When it comes to the challenges that you face as a business guy, right? Your partners, you're a Health Nuts Media. What are some of the challenges that you feel comfortable enough to talk about, to say this is what we faced, and this is how we did to fix, or this is what we did to fix it.
Right, right. Um, you know, I guess one of the biggest challenges, and it's come up over and over again, is just uh, everything changes all the time, and so there's always a lot. There's a lot of consolidation, happening. So partners that you've had relationships with for a long time, all of a sudden they get bought out by a bigger, company, and different management takes over, and all those great relationships you had sort of, go out the door, and so that's been a recurring theme, with us throughout our history, that we really do try to build, good, solid relationships, with our partners, but then, inevitably, they get sucked up into the bigger company, and things change. So that's been difficult. But then you just have to stay nimble, right? Stay,
Mm.
really, really always keep an ear to the ground, and be ready for the next thing. So,
We're ready for the next change, right?
right.
Because,
Yep.
and you said it perfectly, change happens all the time. It's how do you manage that change, and how do you get out in front of it, and how do you realize your position in the marketplace? Is it going to be enhanced, or is it going to be hurt by whatever change is
Right.
coming, and
Yep.
being on
That's
the
right.
forefront of that, right?
Yep.
So that being said, what is it about Health Nuts Media that you'd like to brag about right
So I think at the end of the day, people really love to work with us, and so I find that a lot of times, yeah, the bigger guys, they don't really care about us. They don't give us that individual kind of attention that that we really like. So I would say that, all of the clients that we've had, really enjoy working with us, because
now?
when we're working with them, we're there. We show up every day. We really care about them, about their success, about, we really listen, because I think a lot of times people come and they, what's the old saying, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
That's it.
Um, So, we've got a solution for that. And so we don't walk through the door and say, I know exactly what I'm going to do for you. So we really, we listen, and, and then sort of co-create, because I really think that, uh, one of the things I've also noticed is that most of the clients that I work with have never made a cartoon before. They've never been
Yeah.
involved in that process. And so sort of getting to peek behind the curtain and say, oh, that okay, so we're going to do
Huh.
this, and then we're going to do that. And even though I write a lot of the scripts, um, they are there with me, and like, well, what about the story, and where do you think things are going to go, and what, so there's
Sure.
a lot of there's a lot of that. And I think when your clients are able to lean forward and become part of the, process, they take ownership of
Yeah.
product, of what of how they're going to use, these materials. And that's what we find, in hospitals. What you find is, when you say you must do this, and here it is, and go and do it, that, that culture change is very difficult, right?
Yeah.
And so getting a stakeholder that's really invested in making that change, is part of it. And so being able to tell that story, well, this isn't someone else's story. I was there. I
Right.
helped create that story and tell that story. And now all the patients that come through, I want them to see this video, because I really truly believe that it's going to help them. And so
Well, there's an
that's
investment, right?
right. Yep.
And one of the things I really want to highlight, because I think this goes to a really strong way of being a partner as opposed to selling something, right? You said, I don't know what I'm going to do with you yet, but I'm going to listen. I'm going to find out what the best solution is and what story we can build together. I think if more businesses took that approach with their clientele, they'd have a much better success rate with long-standing relationships and solutions for problems that have been around for a while. Because a lot of businesses are so eager to sell something,
Right.
but they're not allowing somebody to buy into what the potential solution would be.
Right.
And I do that quite a bit with the clientele I work with, in that I say, I don't know what you need, but let's go through this path together, answer some questions, tell me about your business, and then we'll build a customized program for you.
Right.
Same thing here.
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
know
Yeah.
what story we're going
Yeah.
to tell yet,
Right. Yeah.
but you
So
need to help me.
in some ways, our businesses are very similar then.
Yeah, no.
Right.
Well, my point is, and I appreciate you saying that, but my point is, most businesses would be a lot more successful if they just adapted the idea of, I don't know yet, but let's discover this together, as opposed to, I have 7 features and benefits I'm going to ram down your throat, and I'm going to
Right.
expect you to buy it when I'm done with my conversation.
Yep.
That doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if it does, it's not going to be repeatable, because somebody bought something they weren't, or somebody was sold something they didn't buy into it.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is prepare people for making a decision they can buy into, as opposed to having regret later on. Go, I can't believe I paid for that. I can't
Right.
believe
Yeah.
they sold me.
Yeah.
Right. We don't want that. And that's where
Right.
I'm going to bring it all the way back to,
Yep.
the storytelling is so important, right? What kind of problem or conflict do we have? What are my potential resolutions, and how do I change and bring that final solution to the table? That
Mhm.
is the story of one customer's individual situation that you helped solve.
Right.
Let's think about business that way, as opposed to square pegs and round holes and the hammer and the nail, where everything
Right.
looks exactly the same,
Yep.
because that's not how
Right.
things are anymore.
Right. Yeah.
This has been a great conversation. I want to thank you for it. I have one question for you.
Sure. Yeah.
If you were to go back and sit down on a park bench next to 18-year-old Tim Jones,
Uh-huh.
what would that conversation be like?
You know, be a little more serious. I had a lot of fun when I was a kid. So, I think
Love it.
take everything seriously and work hard. So
Perfect.
yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Great way to finish this off, Tim. I appreciate the conversation. Lots of great information that people can learn from. Again, connect with emotion, or connect with empathy, serve with emotion, bring people an understanding of the situation so it can be solved. That's a great story to tell. And I appreciate you spending time with us today on the Business Spotlight. We'll see everybody again on the next episode.
Thanks.